Get yourself comfortable. You can sit on your mat, or if you have yoga blocks or books or a blanket or whatsoever, then use that to sit on, because the higher your hips, the more comfortable usually for your lower back. So give yourself a moment to get comfortable. You can bring your hands onto your knees, palms relaxed, facing up towards the ceiling. Let your elbows and your shoulders relax. And let's start with eyes closed. If that doesn't feel comfortable, then no bother at all. Just soften your gaze as an alternative, so you decide. You can change your position anytime. So main thing, make it feel comfortable. And then let's start by inhaling through the nose, opening the mouth for the exhalation, and repeat this a couple more times in your own breathing pace if you like that. Make your inhalation as deep as it feels good, and relax your throat on the exhalation through your mouth. And then close your mouth again and come back to a nose breath if you can, prioritizing breathing through the nose throughout the class. Can you feel your breath in your body? How does it feel like to breathe? Don't worry too much about your breath. Whatever way you're breathing right now is perfectly fine. Just feel the breath that's there right now. Can you feel that movement of your breath inside you? So how does it feel like to breathe? And then check in with yourself. How are you feeling right now? It doesn't matter how you felt earlier today or yesterday or last week. You can't change that anymore. So all that matters right now is, how do you feel in this moment? Because this is what you can change. Do you feel rather tired? You have little energy, maybe you're a little sad, maybe you're a little unsettled, maybe you're achy or you're having pain. Then give yourself some time. Take breaks throughout the practice. Give yourself a slow pace. Pause the video anytime you need to take a break. Or maybe you feel really energized, really active, really strong. Maybe you feel really awake and you want to push yourself. So push yourself as much as you feel good to. So depending on how you're feeling, that's how I want you to take that class. Do more or less of what I'm offering to you. And then get some movement into your body. Wriggle your fingers, wriggle your toes, roll your shoulders back a couple of times. Wake up your face with a smile if you like that. And then let's open the eyes. Bring your shoulders down towards the ground, away from your ears, and tilt your head to the left. So you're starting to create a little bit more stretch between the right ear and the right shoulder. You can make this a bit more intense by pushing that right shoulder, that right arm more down towards the ground. So you decide how much of a stretch you're going to create here. Give yourself a breath. And then change sides. Tilt the head to the right. Create that length, that stretch in the left side of your neck, between your left ear and your left shoulder. Make it less intense, lift your shoulder, or more intense, consciously, actively push your left shoulder down towards the ground. So don't be afraid if things feel a little tense, a little hard work, a little bit of discomfort. Even a bit of discomfort is perfectly fine. Just don't push into pain, don't push into pure exhaustion, please. Not now, not in any other of the things that we're going to do. And then come back to center. We'll get into shoulder blades and shoulder joints. Lift your shoulders up to your ears and then move them back. Pinch your shoulder blades together. Push your shoulders down towards your hips and then roll your shoulders forward. And then connect those 4 movements into a big circle. Up and back and down and forward. Lifting your shoulders, pinching your shoulder blades together, pushing your shoulders down and squeezing them forward. So making a big circle with your shoulder blades and your shoulder joints. Just getting a little bit more movement into shoulder blades, shoulder joint area. Let's change direction, circle the other way around. You may find one direction easier than the other. That's perfectly fine, that's perfectly normal. And then let's get a little bit more movement into wrist and ankle joints. So stretch out your legs in front of you. Keep your knees and your elbows straight or straightish. And let's start by pointing your feet and pulling your fingers down towards the ground. And then pull your feet up towards the ceiling. Do the same with your hands. So your feet and your hands are going the same direction. Pull up, bend as much as you can. And then point, stretch out as much as you can. And repeat this a couple more times. So the further you start moving here, the more you probably feel a stretch across the calves, the shins, and across the forearms, and the more movement you're gonna get here. So start easy, and once your body feels okay to go further, feel free to push yourself a little bit more. But again, do back off if it feels like pain, like pure exhaustion, if it feels like you're doing a little bit too much too soon. And then let's start to circle. So to the inside first or inwards first, ankle joints circling, wrist joints are circling at the same time. That may be a bit of a tricky one, getting the coordination there. And then change direction, going the other way around. So now you're circling outwards. Nice one. And then if you've been using blocks, you can take them aside if you like. Let's come into an all-fours position, onto your hands, onto your knees. If you feel more comfortable with some padding under your knees, put a blanket or a jumper or a pillow underneath, totally up to you. And then we be starting with a couple of cat-cows. We'll go into them statically first, so for you to feel how they feel like. So let's move into cat, tuck under your tail, curve your back, curl in your head and bring your nose and your pubic bone as close as it feels comfortable. So the whole front is working now, trying to bring your nose and your pubic bone closer towards each other, so your back starts stretch. Take a breath in your cat pose, stretching the back. And then let's move into the opposite, cow pose. Let your belly drop towards the ground, lift your chest, lift your gaze. It's totally up to you if you look towards the front of your mat or forward or up. So see what feels comfortable on your neck. It can be challenging, but it should not be painful. So you're doing the exact opposite, arching your lower back, your mid back and your neck as much as it feels comfortable. Your tail is lifting. And give yourself another moment, having the back work, the front stretch, and then connect this into a bit more of dynamic movement. Bend into cat, nose and tailbone are coming closer. And then arch into cow, nose and tailbone are moving away from each other. Or I should say pubic bone. So as you bend, bring your nose and your pubic bone towards each other. And as you arch, pubic bone and nose are moving away from each other. So bend and stretch the back, that's your cat. And then arch and stretch the front, and that's your cow. You can exhale as you bend into cat. And inhale as you arch into cow. If this feels nice, you don't have to. So it's just a suggestion, and you feel free to take it or leave it, depending on how it works for you. And then let's sit back into child's pose. So bring your hips back to your heels. You can let them sit down if this feels okay on your ankles, on your knees, on your hips, or have them a bit hovering if this feels a bit better on those joints. Stretch your hands to the front of your mat and let your head sink down towards the ground. You can reach the hands even a little bit further forward at the same time as you're pushing your hips back towards the end of your mat, just to create a little bit more length between the hands and the hips. So hands are reaching forward, hips are reaching back, pulling everything between the hands and the hips a little bit longer, a little bit more apart, giving you a little bit more stretch. And you can make this even a bit more intense if you like. lift the head, take the hands even further forward, and then again try to pull your hips back. So your hips are reaching away from your hands, giving yourself even a little bit more stretch here. So give yourself a breath or two here. You could put your head onto a jumper or a pillow just for some extra cushioning here if you like, if you don't want to hold your head yourself. And then try this one more time. Reach the hands even further away from you. Pull your hips back away from your hands so you're creating length again, and you're creating stretch through your spine and through your arms, your armpits. And then let's take the hands back again. Curl under your toes. Spread your fingers and lift your hips up towards the ceiling. You can move your head here a little bit from side to side, relaxing your neck muscles. We'll start with the heels off the ground, and then you start to reach them down towards the ground. So the more you reach them down, the more stretch you're gonna probably get in your calves. Your heels don't have to be touching the ground. So see if just reaching down already gives you a nice stretch in the back of your calves, and maybe even in the back of your thighs, your hamstrings. Remind yourself to breathe. Sometimes it's easy to stop breathing when you're focusing on something else. And then let's take a big step forward with that left foot first. Maybe you tap that left foot forward a little bit and then use your hands. So don't be afraid using your hands, getting the foot forward. That's what you got hands for. Let the right knee come down. Again, if you want to put it up a little bit, do it. You can fold your mat or put a jumper underneath, and then reach your arms up towards the ceiling so you're coming into low lunge position. With your left hand, take your right wrist and stretch over to the left. So you're pulling your right hip and your right shoulder a little away from each other. So I'll show you from the front. Left hand takes the right wrist, and you're taking that right arm over to the left, pulling the right shoulder and the right hip away from each other, creating a little bit of stretch here. You can always go deeper or back off a little bit depending on how it feels for you. So you decide how intense you're making that stretch. And then let's come back out of this. You can bring your hands onto your hips and let your hips sink forward. Or if you prefer having your hands on the front thigh, that's totally up to you. Now, if that stretch, you're probably going to feel a bit more stretch in the front hip on the right side, maybe even in the front thigh. If this feels too much, you can again have blocks either side your body or books or whatever you get there. Have the hands on the blocks and lift yourself up a little bit. So that lift will usually make the stretch a little bit less intense. Or sink a little bit more down. The more weight on your hips, the more you're sinking down, the more intense the stretch is going to be. You also can back off a little bit, which will give you less stretch, or go further forward, which will give you more stretch. You decide. Let's go back into our downward facing dog, hands down. Take that left foot back, curl under your toes, lift your hips up towards the ceiling, and give your legs a little bit more stretch here. Tune back into your breath. Any way of breathing is perfectly fine here as long as you don't stop breathing. And if you catch yourself that you stopped, no big deal. Just get back at it. Step the right foot forward in between your hands. Let your left knee come down towards the ground. Pad it up if you like. Reach up towards the ceiling. So in your low lunge, take your left wrist, move it over to the right. Give yourself a couple of breaths in that side stretch. Make it more or less intense, totally up to you. Back off if you don't want it as intense, or pull yourself further into it if you feel you'd like it a little bit more intense. And then again, let's stretch the front of your hip and your front thigh muscle by letting the hips sink forward. A little bit forward will give you a little stretch, a lot forward will give you a lot stretch. Again, you decide. Little weight on the hips, having the weight on your blocks or whatever you have to hand will again give you less stretch. Loads of weight on the hips. Having the hips drop down will give you more stretch. So loads of ways of how you can make the stretch your own. Don't worry if your front knee bends further than 90 degrees. That's perfectly fine, unless it's painful. And then walk your front foot further forward so you come to a degree in your knees that feels more comfortable again. And then from here, bring your hands down. We'll step to the front of the mat, coming into a forward fold. Your feet roughly as wide as your hips. You can bend your knees here. And then allow your upper body to fold over your legs. Move your head a little bit from side to side if you like. Shake out your shoulders. Take an inhalation through your nose, out through your mouth. Close your mouth, come back to a nose breath, and then roll up into standing. Reach your arms overhead, come into upward salute. Stretch the whole front of your body and roll down again into your forward fold. Bend your knees. Roll up into standing. Reach your arms overhead into upward salute. Stretch yourself, make yourself long and tall, and then make yourself small. Roll down again into your forward fold. Bend your knees. Let's do this one more time in your own movement pace. Go as fast or as slow as you like. Main thing, make it feel nice, make it feel comfortable. And then the next time you're down in your forward fold, again, move your head a little from side to side. You can pedal out your legs here a little bit. It's a little hard to fully straighten them there. If it feels perfectly fine for you, do it. But if it gives you a pain or a really strained feeling in the back of your knee or your hamstring, which is quite normal in that position, and just straighten them a little bit less. It's still fine if they're a little bit bent here. You'll still get the stretch. And then bring your hands onto the ground. With your right foot, take a big step back. And then that right heel turns in, so your right foot can be flat on the ground. Bend your left knee, your right knee straightens, and then let's come up into Warrior Two stance. You can shorten your stance or lengthen it. See what way you like it better. And from here, we're gonna add a little bit more stretch to the front of your chest. So bring your hands together. You can grab your wrists or interlace your fingers, whatever you like best. And then straighten your elbows. Push your hands away from you. So the more you straighten your elbows, you're pushing the hands away from you. And the more you're rolling your shoulders back and pinching your shoulder blades towards each other, the more stretch you're gonna get across your chest. You can look down, or it's just straight ahead or up towards the ceiling. See what feels nicest here. Let's take another breath here. And release. Let's step to the front of the mat again. Your left foot takes a big step back. Let's take a Warrior Two stance here. Turn your left heel in, so the left foot goes flat onto the ground. Your left knee straight. Your right knee bends. And then get yourself up again into your Warrior Two. This time, interlace your fingers and push your palms away from you. Straighten your elbows again. And then see, can you push your hands, your arms away from you? So you start to roll your shoulders forward. That movement you did earlier. Elbows forward, hands forward, shoulders forward, to create a little bit more stretching between your shoulder blades. You can look down and take a couple of breaths here. And you can even think of every time you're exhaling to push your hands further forward, further away from you. And then release. And let's come into one more downward facing dog. Hands down, step the foot back. Give the legs a bit of a stretch. You can move the head a little from side to side. See how far your heels feel comfortable now to drop down, to reach down towards the ground. And then let's come into a seated position. We're gonna create a little bit more mobility and stretch around the outer hips and the lower back. So bring your feet together. If this gives you a bit of a pain or strain in the hip, the front of the hip or the belly, you can sit on your blocks again and do it the exact same way. So feet together, the knees go out to the side, and then let your hands walk forward. I'll just do it without, because that's the version that works better for me. So everybody's body is a little different here. So walk your hands forward, and you probably start getting a bit of a stretch, and it can be in loads of different places, which is perfectly normal. Maybe you feel it around the hips or the inside of your thighs, maybe your lower back, maybe the front of your hips. So whenever you feel a stretch that feels comfortable, settle for it. If it's painful, back off. Allow your head to drop down, your elbows to drop down. And you can either stay here for a couple of breaths, so being statically in that position, or make it a little bit more dynamic by moving or swaying from side to side. You can stay on one side for a couple of breaths before you move over to the other side. So you decide how long you're staying on each side. You're also deciding how far you're reaching over to each side. If you don't want to settle for one or the other option, you can mix and match them. Do the first option first, and then add in the movements. So second option, and then coming back to your first option again. Tune back in to your breath. Again, it's quite normal to stop breathing every now and then when you're focused, but just remind yourself then to get back breathing. And then walk your hands towards you, come back into straight seated position, stretch your legs out in front of you. So depending on how your hip joints are designed and formed, some people will be able to move the legs out quite far and some not so far, and that's again perfectly fine. So move your legs apart as far as it feels comfortable for you. It's perfectly okay if your knees bend a little bit, no big deal. Some people, they bend the knees, some people they don't. Don't worry about that. And again, we're gonna move a little bit forward. And the good thing here now is if the stretch starts getting too intense, either in the inside of your thighs or around the hip, the lower back area, you can just walk back up. If you want it more intense, you can drop forward a little bit more. So this way you have quite nice control through your hands and how much you are folding and getting into a stretch. You've got your options again, like earlier. You can stay here statically, or you can move and sway from side to side. Stay as long on each side as you like. Make it as intense or little intense as it feels good for you. So again, just because you can doesn't mean you have to push yourself. Think back of earlier when I asked you about your energy levels. And if your energy levels are rather low today, keep it slow, keep it easy. Just because you usually do those things doesn't mean you have to do them today. And if your energy levels feel like you can do loads, you can push yourself, then go a bit further. So you can move from sides to sides or stay in the center position. Depending on how far your body feels comfortable going forward, maybe your forearms are on the ground, maybe your hands are on the ground, maybe your hands are closer to your legs. So all those options are perfectly fine. And then let's bring the legs together. We take the last twist, and I personally like to sit up a little bit higher for that because it makes my hips and the lower back feel a bit nicer. So you can sit on the mats, but if you want, get back at your yoga blocks or whatever you've been sitting on earlier. Let's cross the legs. Take your right hand onto your left knee and your left hand back behind you. You're perfectly allowed to use your hands for pulling and pushing now, but only pull and push as much as your spine feels happy. So turn and twist to the left and then look over your left shoulder. You can stay here a couple of breaths, and you can try to turn and twist a little bit further to the left every time you exhale. If you have reached a level where the twist is turning into hard work, that's perfectly fine. But if it's turning into pain, I want you to back off. You don't have to fully come out, just back off as much as you have to, so you're feeling better, you're feeling pain-free again. So with your exhalation, you can try to turn and twist a little bit further. Stay where you are with your inhalation and see, does it feel good to turn and twist a little further on your exhalation? And then let's change sides. Uncross the legs, cross them the other way around. Left hand goes onto your right knee. Your right hand goes back behind you. Look over your right shoulder and then see how far does it feel good for you to turn and to twist. When is it getting too painful, too intense, back off. If it's intense, if it's hard work, if it's really stretchy, if it's even a little uncomfortable, that's perfectly okay. There's no need to be afraid of that. But if you don't like it, then you choose to back off. That's perfectly okay. Your decision. So do listen to your body. And then see, does it feel okay to turn and twist a little bit more on your exhalation? Stay where you are on your inhalation and turn and twist a little further on your next exhalation. You don't have to keep twisting. You can also decide to come back a little bit and then stay in a less stretchy version, in a version that feels more comfortable for your body, that feels better for your body. And then let's come out of this. So get yourself comfortable, whatever seated position you like now, for the last couple of minutes breathing. I have a habit of always crossing my legs the same way. So you may have too, which is no big deal as well. You can bring your hands back down onto your thighs, elbows and shoulders relaxed. If you like, close your eyes, or as an alternative, soften your gaze. And again, if you want, you can inhale through your nose, exhale through your open mouth. Repeat this a couple more times in your own breathing pace. How deep does the inhalation feel good for you? And can you relax your throat on your exhalation? And then close your mouth and come back to a nose breath. Let your shoulders and your elbows relax and sink down. And tune back in with your breath. Can you feel your breath? How does your breath feel like now? Maybe your breath has changed throughout the practice. So main thing, can you connect to your breath? Can you get a feeling for how it feels to breathe? And don't worry if this needs a little bit of time. Like anything, it's something you can practice to get a feeling for your body and what's happening in it. And then do check in with yourself again. How are you feeling right now? Are your energy levels rather low or rather high? Has anything changed compared to the beginning of the class, the beginning of the practice when I asked you first? So by noticing how you feel before you do something, and then how you feel after you did something, it can give you really good information to bias your decisions on the next time. So it can help you to tune in a little bit more, to adjust, to modify. It's a bit of a way of getting to know your body a bit better. And then give yourself another moment to just feel your body. And then start to bring some movement back into your body, wriggling your toes, wriggling your fingers, rolling your shoulders back a couple of times. If you like, wake up your face with a big smile. You can keep that smile for a breath or two. Let your shoulders drop down. Let's open the eyes. And if you want, you're welcome to place your hands together and bow down with me. Namaste.